Miss Sinema, Miss Sinema. No.
That's Kyrsten Sinema, a one-time grassroots progressive turned right-leaning United States Senator whose journey to Washington came at the cost of everything she once stood for. I'm Grace Kulenschmidt, and this is the story of Kyrsten Sinema. She was born to a middle-class family in Tucson, Arizona in 1976. When the recession hit in the 80s, Sinema's life took a turn. Her family filed for bankruptcy while their home went into foreclosure. She moved to Florida, found shelter in an abandoned gas station, lived off of food stamps, and barely made ends meet with help from the Mormon Church.
My family faced tough times when I was a kid. When my dad lost his job, we lost everything. But yet, as I was homeless as a kid for 2 years, thanks to this great country and the opportunities afforded us, and a good public education system, I was able to get back on my feet and make it to the middle class.
In 1987, the family left the gas station and moved into a farmhouse. Sinema graduated high school as co-valedictorian in 1993, and within 2 years graduated college from BYU, paid for by Pell Grants and a merit scholarship, according to AZ Central. After graduating from college, Sinema parted ways with the Mormon Church. She moved back home to Arizona and became a social worker in a low-income area in Phoenix. Later on, Sinema earned a master's in social work and got a law degree. She worked as a criminal defense attorney and, among other clients, represented an Iraqi refugee who waited for citizenship papers for over 2 years. Representing those on the margins of society would end up being the key driver for her early political career. When George W. Bush took office and U.S. imperialism thrived, Sinema stood out in the red state by protesting the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. She organized 15 anti-war rallies by the start of the Iraq War. And then her political journey began. In 2000, Sinema worked on Ralph Nader's Green Party presidential bid before embarking on her own political journey. In 2001 and 2002, Sinema ran for local offices as an independent. She refused to take campaign contributions. "I don't believe in accepting money in exchange for votes. That's bribery," she told the Arizona Republic. She lost both races and then attacked capitalism in a letter. "Until the average American realizes that capitalism damages their livelihood while augmenting the livelihoods of the wealthy, the almighty dollar will continue to rule," she wrote. Later, Sinema, the proud owner of more than 100 pairs of shoes, would call herself a Prada socialist. After losing 2 races as an independent, Sinema switched over to the Democratic side and won a House seat representing Arizona's 15th congressional district.
In the grand scheme of compromises, it's not really that big a deal.
Branko Marcetic, a staff writer at Jacobin magazine, told us.
But what I do find interesting about it, it's like one very tiny step in what would become a series of much bigger kind of leaps to the center after that.
On social issues, Sinema was a glimmer of hope for marginalized folks living in Arizona. She fought against the same-sex marriage ban. She fought for the rights of immigrants. She spoke out about mass incarceration. She fought to include gender identity in anti-discrimination laws. She led a successful effort to kill a ban on affirmative action, and she strongly opposed abortion restrictions.
In Arizona, actually, it's not that easy to be a progressive state legislator because we have a very conservative legislature, and now we have a pretty conservative governor coming in. But I think frankly, the knowledge that if I weren't there fighting, that I'm not sure someone else would be saying those things. That keeps me going and helps me feel like I'm making a difference for the communities that have historically been underserved and marginalized in Arizona.
But somewhere along the way, Sinema seemingly looked at the path of least resistance, taking into account the fact that Arizona had voted for a Democrat president only one time between 1952 and 2016. And it's in this context that her progressive roots seemed to fall by the wayside. One of the earliest indicators of her gradual move to the right came in the form of a book she wrote in 2009 called Unite and Conquer, Marcetic told us.
It basically is about how people can cross the aisle and you can work with people to get things done across the aisle. That's sort of the big mark of which she self-consciously rebranded. It's politics. You, of course, have to work with people to get things done. But the thing is, there's a lot of politicians who do that, but don't sort of make a brand out of that.
In 2010, Sinema was elected to the Arizona Senate, and in 2012, she decided to run for a U.S. House seat.
Congress does nothing, or worse, bails out Wall Street and the powerful while we suffer. That's why I'm announcing today that I'm running for Congress. I'll stand up to the powerful in Washington.
Sinema won the race, which made her the first ever openly bisexual member of Congress. But once she got to Washington, her words about making Wall Street pay had seemingly been lost in transit, as her rebrand was about to take center stage. Sinema immediately went to work helping corporate lobbyists in Wall Street, two groups who were further marginalizing the marginalized communities she claimed she got into politics to protect. Sinema's ideological shift persisted as she advanced in political office. She advocated for cutting corporate taxes and regulations, and she approved a partial rollback of the 2010 financial overhaul known as Dodd-Frank. One bill supported by Sinema was literally written by Wall Street. The New York Times expands, "In a sign of Wall Street's resurgent influence in Washington, Citigroup's recommendations were reflected in more than 70 lines of the House Committee's 85-line bill. Two crucial paragraphs, prepared by Citigroup in conjunction with other Wall Street banks, were copied nearly word for word. Lawmakers changed two words to make them plural." In 2015, Sinema, the former anti-war activist, bafflingly voted against the Iran nuclear deal, an arms control agreement that even the Pope backed. But that didn't mean much to Sinema, who said, "Yeah, I don't know him." That same year, Sinema voted to prevent the resettlement of Syrian and Iraqi refugees until tighter vetting processes were implemented. And Sinema's departure from everything she once stood for persisted. The Phoenix New Times notes, "She introduced legislation aimed at cracking down on the U.S. visa waiver program and was one of only 6 Democrats to vote to punish sanctuary cities. And she joined Republicans in passing bills intended to deregulate the banking industry and attack the Affordable Care Act's employer mandate." Sinema also voted in favor of the Make America Secure Appropriations Act, which included $1.6 billion in funding for the border wall. With Trump in office, Sinema voted in line with the stake man half of the time, according to 538. In 2018, Sinema decided to run for Senate. In the midst of her campaign, she once again went to bat for those who needed it most, Wall Street bankers. She voted to support the Crapo banking bill, co-authored by Senate Banking Committee Chair Mike Crapo. The bill undercut regulations and weakened consumer protections, including against discrimination. The New York Times said the bill removes protections for 25 of the top 38 banks, weakens regulations on the biggest players, and encourages them to manipulate regulations for their benefit, and saps consumer protections. With Sinema's help, the bill was signed into law. So why did Sinema, the one-time grassroots progressive activist who vowed to take on the wealthy, instead choose to protect them? The source of her campaign funds could provide a clue. She was one of the largest recipients of campaign money from the banking and finance sectors. From 2011 to 2020, Sinema has received over $1.9 million from the securities and investment sector and $422,000 from the commercial banking industry, or contributions she once referred to as bribery, just years prior. During her Senate campaign, Sinema raised over $22 million from various PACs, big tech companies, and deep-pocketed donors.
And over the years, I'm proud to say that I have taken the time to learn and grow and occasionally even change my opinion.
Sinema edged out Martha McSally in the U.S. Senate race and was sworn in on January 3, 2019. In the summer of 2020, Sinema's work alongside Republicans did not go unnoticed. She received awards from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for her exemplary leadership and bipartisanship. After Joe Biden took office and the Democrats and Republicans split a 50-50 Senate, Sinema made a move that would have seemingly disappointed her past progressive self very, very much. Sinema, who once doggedly fought for immigrants and refugees as a social worker and attorney, chose to side with Republicans in voting to block undocumented immigrants from receiving stimulus checks. And when it came to including the $15 minimum wage in the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package, Sinema told Politico, "The minimum wage provision is not appropriate for the reconciliation process. It is not a budget item, and it shouldn't be in there." While Sinema deemed inclusion of the $15 minimum wage in the reconciliation process, which allows passage with 51 votes, or 50 and a tiebreaker from the vice president, inappropriate, she also doesn't believe in ending the filibuster, which calls for 60 votes in order to pass, requiring the support from at least 10 Republicans. Meaning, she seemingly doesn't support increasing minimum wages unless at least 10 Republicans sign on too. So with that, she walked into the Senate chamber, literally gave Mitch McConnell, the self-described Grim Reaper, a pat on the back, and gleefully voted against a livable wage. The move was somewhat surprising, considering Sinema's stance on the minimum wage in 2014, when she tweeted, "A full-time minimum wage earner makes less than $16K a year. This one's a no-brainer. Tell Congress to #raise the wage." Had she stuck by this sentiment, a majority of her state would have given her a pat on the back. According to one poll, 61% of Arizonans support raising the minimum wage, and had it advanced, roughly 839,000 workers in Sinema State would have seen a boost in pay.
Folks know in Arizona, I'll always put their interests first, never party.
And I realized, if I do this thing where I'm constantly geofecting to the right, and I'm touting myself as someone who gets things done, as someone who's moderate, that's worked for me so far, so I'm going to keep doing it, and it did work for her. And there's really no incentive beyond her own political convictions, if she even has any anymore, to abandon that.
Sinema's political transformation may be complete. She's been able to advance her political career through gravitating towards positions that are important to the American people and crossing party lines in a way that is rarely seen in Washington.